Hi everyone, welcome to another TechNerd tutorial. Today we're going to be installing Moodle 2.9, which is an online learning management system, onto Ubuntu Desktop 14.04. Moodle is an online learning management system that is open source and allows for learning and training online. So we can see that this is a free learning platform which really allows you to facilitate that training and learning. There's a lot of different features. I'm just going to show the first few to deal with things like interface. It's modern, you can use it on tablets, you can use it on phones. There's a lot of collaboration and it's very intuitive to use and you can track progress really well. There's a lot of administrative features such as theming and backing up, as well as specific user rules and permissions, as well as plugins that can add features to Moodle as well. There's a bunch more for you to explore in here. I'm not going to go through all of them. We want to get started on installing Moodle. There's just some final navigations on the main page where we see the announcements. They have a very large community for support, as well as posts, events, and resources that you can take a look at. Of course, at the very bottom, they're partners. If we scroll all the way to the top, we can install Moodle by clicking on the Downloads link at the very top. And then we can go ahead and click on the Moodle 2.9 Plus button in the main page. The simplest one for us to use is to download the zip. So we'll go ahead, click Download Zip, and then that will automatically save that file, and we can just have it open in Archive Manager. Hit OK, let the file download, and open up Archive Manager. When Archive Manager is open, we can just click the Moodle folder and extract it. We want to make sure that where we extract it is going to be to our home folder. So just double check, click home, and then in the bottom right, go ahead and click extract. This will then pull out all the files from that zip file into its own folder inside our home so that we can now manipulate the Moodle system. So once it is finished extracting, I'm just going to show that the files are here in our home. You can just go ahead and click on close. But here, when we see the home folder, we see that in home, we now have a Moodle folder. And that's what we want to make sure. It just makes the commands a little easier to do later. We can go ahead, close home. We can go ahead and close Archive Manager. And now we're basically ready to install Moodle. So we click on the How to Install Moodle. And it's going to go through some different requirements and instructions of installing Moodle. After the table of contents, it's going to give us our software requirements as well as our hardware requirements. It doesn't take a lot to power Moodle, but it does recommend 2 GHz dual core in order to get the best bang for your buck. We have already downloaded a copy of Moodle, so we don't have to worry about the download and copy files instructions since we already have them. We can scroll down a little and it does give instructions for a web server. We are going to install a web server and then from there continue with the instructions here. Here it does give instructions of whether you want Moodle to be a subdirectory or the main component of your web page. We want to go ahead and open Terminal, and the first thing that we're going to install is going to be taskcell. So sudo apt-get install taskcell, and this is going to install server components so that we can do that a little bit more easier. Gonna go ahead and let it install, and once it's done installing, we're going to go ahead and load that task cell. So we'll give it another couple seconds, and when it's complete, then we're going to go ahead and type in sudo task cell, and this will then load up an interface for us to choose to install a LAMP server. So here we go, we'll type in sudo task cell. It's going to open up a basic interface. We're going to use the arrow keys to go down to LAMP server, hit the spacebar, and then hit enter. Then it's going to go ahead and install all the components of a LAMP server. It's going to pop up asking for us to create a password for the MySQL root user. We can go ahead and just type out a password and then retype it to make sure that we didn't misspell anything. And then we'll let the installation continue forward. this will install an Apache MySQL PHP server for us to be able to have Moodle run off of it. There is also a handful of dependencies that we also have to install to make sure that Moodle runs properly. There's quite a bit of them, so you can pause the screen right now or check out our webpage where we will have a written component of this tutorial where they will have all this where you can copy and paste. So either or, we just need to type in this particularly long command to install the other programs, and then we'll go ahead and let those install. Once those are done, then all of our prerequisites for Moodle, it will now be complete in our Moodle server, and we can now worry about just installing Moodle into our web server and getting it properly configured. For us to do that, we can now move our Moodle folder to the web server. So we're just going to go ahead and type sudo mv to move our Moodle folder to var/www/html. This will then move our folder there, and what we want to do is on the web page, it does give us instructions for us to secure Moodle so that there's less likely of there to be an attack and something bad happening with Moodle. So for that, they do give us some instructions that we want to type in. It does use generic paths to Moodle, so we're going to type it in because we have to change those paths anyways. We're going to once again start with sudo, and then following the instructions on the page, chown -r, and we're going to give permissions to root, and then we need to manually put in our correct path, so var/www/html/Moodle. Then we go ahead and do the same thing with the second line. We go ahead and start with sudo, whatever the information is in the second line, and then the correct path, var/www/html/Moodle. And then finally we do that for the very last line. And the very last line, what it does is it just makes some of those executable files only executable by the administrative user. Therefore, what we're doing is primarily just trying to keep our Moodle environment as secure as possible. So once we're done typing in this particular command, we can move on to our next task. Going back to the instructions on the web page, there is a component for permissions if you have ACL installed on your server. Since we did a clean install of Ubuntu, there isn't an ACL at all, so we're going to skip that step. Now we want to create an empty database. So there are instructions. I'm just going to open in a new tab for MySQL, and from there we can scroll down, and this section is quite simple because we can copy and paste a lot of the commands that are on this page. So we need to first log into MySQL, so we can copy the first line, and in terminal go ahead and paste it back in. It is going to ask for a password. This is the password that we created when we first installed MySQL, so we type it and away we go. Go to the next line, we can go create database, copy the entire line and paste it in, but just note that there is a lowercase Moodle. That is the title of the database that you're making. So if you want to name it something else, once again for security, you can go ahead and change that before you create this database. I'm going to scroll down. This is where we're going to create the user and give it a password for the Moodle database, which was just highlighted. Here is the user and the password. You do want to change these from the defaults once again to increase security. We're just going to copy and paste this entire line into terminal, but for you, you really should change at least the user and the password for this particular line. Once we've done that, we can then go ahead and scroll down. There isn't an instruction to exit out of MySQL, so we're just going to go ahead and type exit and then leave MySQL. So we're done installing the empty database. We can now move on to now creating the data directory. So from here, this is where Moodle stores all its information. They do it outside of the web server for increased security. So for us to do that, we just go back into terminal. There's two commands. We will follow them. We're going to be placing these directories. So sudo make dir, I'm going to put them in var/Moodle data. And from there, we can then change the permissions so that it is chmodded to 0777. And then that'll be everything for the Moodle data directory. Going back to the web page, once again, there's some more ACL information we can skip over. And then there's some securing the Moodle data in a web directory. If you are doing hosting where you do not have access outside of the web directory, you can use .htaccess with Apache in order to secure that inside the web directory. To start the Moodle install, there's a couple ways. There's command line, and then there's the web-based installer. I find the web-based installer a little easier to use, so we're going to go ahead and use that method to install the rest of Moodle. So with that, I'm going to open up another tab. I'm going to go to the web address of my server. If you don't have a web address yet, you can go ahead and click the annotation on your screen, take you to one of our videos of how to get a dynamic DNS account through no IP. Once we're here at the installation, we can go ahead and choose our language and hit next. It's going to ask for some paths to some of our system directories. So first the web address, which you can't change, and the Moodle directory, which you cannot change. We want to adjust the data directory, so it's what we created, var/Moodle data. Then we can go ahead and click next. From there, it's going to go to a page for us to confirm our database. So we have already done the default of MySQL, so we can just click next, and then we need to put in our database information. So we use the default, so we're just going to type in Moodle user for the database user, and the database password, we're going to type in your password. The table prefix you can change if you'd like. I would suggest changing it for security. And then the database port and the Unix socket you can leave blank if needed. The configuration file, because we have hardened Moodle, we do need to create this file manually. So all we have to do is copy everything that's in the gray box, and we need to create this file in our Moodle directory. So once I've highlighted everything, I can go ahead and copy it, and back in terminal, I'm going to have to create the file. So we're going to type in sudo nano, and we're going to go to var/www/html/Moodle, and we're going to create a config.php file. We're going to go ahead and hit enter. It should be blank, and then we can go ahead and paste all that information into this file. Control O, enter to save, Control X to exit. From there, we're done. We can go ahead and hit next. If you get this screen, it just means that something's wrong with the JSON PHP extension. So for us to fix this, all we have to go is go back into terminal. I'm going to reload Apache. So sudo service apache2 restart, and then enter, and I'll go ahead and restart the web server so that when we go back to Firefox, we can just reload this page, and then it will continue on with the installation. It's going to give us the copyright notice. We have to go ahead and agree by hitting continue. And from there, it's going to test our environment to make sure that we have all the correct server components. All of them is okay. There is another one for /arguments that is not turned on by default. You can go ahead and click there to see if you need it, but you don't need it for 2.9 unless you're using SCORM, but it will eventually be a requirement in 3.0 when that is released. Go ahead and hit install. It's going to go ahead and install. This will take quite a bit of time depending on your server. You can just stay on this page and wait until it automatically goes to the bottom where there's a continue button. I've sped this section along so that we don't have to wait forever, but when it's done, it will automatically scroll all the way down to the bottom, and there'll be continue. We can go ahead and click that continue and go to the next step. From there, we've basically finished installing Moodle, but we need to create our first user. So when it loads to the next page, it's going to ask for the first administrative user. We're going to stick with admin. We do need to put in a password. They do keep these passwords pretty high level with at least a lowercase, an uppercase, and at least a non-alphanumeric character. So I'm going to go ahead, type a password. I'm going to keep everything else as default for now, but I do need to put in an email address, which is just going to be our info@technerdservices.com. And scroll all the way down to the bottom. You can fill in any of this additional information, or you can change it later, and then we can go ahead and click the update profile. It's going to continue to load a little bit. These sections, they do take a little bit longer because of what the server is doing in the background, creating the user and creating the tables in the database. Once it's loaded, it will take us to the next part of the settings, where the front page, where we want to name our site, as well as give it a title where it really is just looking for a single word. So we're going to title our webpage Tech Nerd Services Training Site. We're going to give it a short name for the site, so TNS Train. We're going to leave everything else as defaults, but you do want to change them to your preferences, and then we're going to hit Save Changes. It will load us to the main screen with the admin user logged in, and from there we also want to make a few additional configurations in Moodle. So going back to the installation instructions, we're going to scroll down. There is some additional settings. The first one is the SMTP server. We're not going to include that in this video. You just need to put in your SMTP server information. It's important because it does need it to send out password reset emails. The next one we want to do is system paths in Linux. So with that, we can go back to Moodle, click on Site Administration, scroll down a little bit, and we're looking for a server. From there, we can go ahead and click on the system paths, and we can add those system paths from our Ubuntu server. So path to DU, so this is going to be an application that helps with search in a directory. So we want to type in user/bin/do, as well as then path to aspell. We can go ahead and type in user/bin/aspell. If you read the suggested text in the text below the fields, it actually does have all these defaults. So you can go ahead and copy and paste whatever is in the information right below the text fields. Don't forget to save at the very bottom, and then we'll be done with putting in our system paths. From there, we're going to go back to installing Moodle. I'm going to look at a few more. We're going to skip the HTTP proxy because we're not doing one. You can update the location when needed. We do need to configure cron. This one is important because this is what helps Moodle update its database. So we can go ahead and click on the link. The Moodle will not run properly without cron. So with that, we can scroll down past the table of contents, past some of the background information about cron and what we need to do with it, and then we can get to setting up cron in your system. There's a link for cron with Unix or Linux. We can go ahead and click that. Then it'll take us to a specific page where we can just copy and paste the information. So we keep scrolling all the way down until we get to using the cron tab program on Unix. And from there, we will now start typing in some of these commands into terminal. So back in terminal, we're going to now type in the cron tab. We do need to start with sudo, so sudo cron tab -u for the user, www-data, and then -e for us to edit it. We may need to put in our password, and it's going to ask for an editor. We have been using nano, so just type in 2 and enter. And then from there, we just need to scroll all the way to the bottom with our arrow keys. And then all we have to do is copy the second line from the web page into the cron tab. So copy, go back to terminal, and then we can go ahead and paste that directly in. Once again, Control O to save, and then Control X to exit the nano interface. So we're basically done now with cron tab. It will update periodically to make sure that the database is up to date with everything in Moodle. The next thing that we want to install that we have already installed in the server, but we want to link to the Moodle, is antivirus. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create a quarantine folder. So we can just type in sudo make-dir var-quarantine and then give ownership of this folder to the web server account www-data. Once we've done those two things, then we can go back into our Moodle environment and once again in site administration be able to add the information for our antivirus inside Moodle. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit. What we're looking for under site administration is security. Whoops, I went a little too far, so I'm just going to scroll back up looking for security under site administration. So I'm going to click on security. I'm clicking on antivirus, And in there, now use ClamAV on uploaded files. So scan all uploaded files. I'm going to check that off. ClamAV path, it's going to most likely be the default, which is once again in the reminder text below the field. So we're just going to type in user/bin/clamscan. And then we want to put in the quarantine directory that we have just created. So that we put under var and quarantine. Once all that's typed in, we just scroll once again to the bottom and hit Save Changes. And that's basically everything for us to get our Moodle environment set up. Other additional considerations is to perform the backup of the Moodle environment, as well as backups of your courses so that your Moodle is safe from any type of disaster. And that's how you set up and install Moodle in Ubuntu 14.04. Hi everyone, thanks again for watching this video. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And go ahead and leave a comment down below if you have any additional questions or comments. Furthermore, check out some of our related videos or find us in our social media. If you would like email notifications of whenever we release new video or written tutorials, you can go to our webpage technerdservices.com and sign up for our weekly newsletter. We will send to your inbox notifications of those new video and tutorials. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, keep teching on.